So it's Before They Take Us Away. So could you guys please introduce yourself first? Okay, I do the speakers. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having us. My name is Antonia Glenn. I'm the director of the film, and I'll turn it over to my mother to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Glenn, and I'm an executive producer and the narrator of the film.
And I'm Patrick Glenn, and I am one of the producers and one of the main cinematographers on the film as well.
Great, thank you very much. So I have a question about your film. The first one is the highlight of the film. So what you guys think, most like highlighted the scene or stories in your film? I want to hear about it. And who's gonna talk about it?
I think
it's gonna be Antonia.
Yeah, Antonia.
Well, the film explores the experiences of Japanese Americans who self-evacuated during a very brief window during World War II in the wake of Executive Order 9066. And so these were families who did not experience camp. And so these were families who, really had to kind of struggle and make it on their own. And so I think that these stories have not really been told. And I think one of the highlights to me was my mother conducted all of these interviews. She interviewed over 30 members of the self-evacuee community. And one thing that struck me was that people were really willing to share very personal and often painful stories with my mother of isolation, of experiencing racial hostility and violence, and incredible hard work, because these were families who had left the West Coast, left California and Washington and other states on the West Coast, and had to move to inland states and really start over. And one of the stories that struck me was this man, Glenn, was remembering his family really, had gotten to the point where they were, struggling to subsist. They were trying to work as farm laborers and were, they were at near starvation levels. And at that point, his father wrote to the US government and said, "Can we now come into the camps?" And his father and the government said, "No, it's too late. You're on your own." So they really had to kind of figure out how to make it. And so that just struck me, the idea that a family that had been displaced, that had received no support from the government, not even shelter or housing or, even a, meager, amount of subsistence, that they were turned away from the government from even being able to go to a camp. And so that struck me as remarkable experience. And I think it also sort of points out that the idea that, this population was a threat to the national security, it kind of demonstrates that that's clearly not true, because otherwise they would have said, yes, absolutely, we want to put you in a camp behind barbed wire. But once this family was away from what was considered the war zone on the West Coast, that they were left to their own devices. So I think that Glenn's experience and some of the other people's experiences really points to how hard people worked, and the kind of the sacrifices that their families made. And so I just think there's a lot of stories here that haven't been heard, and we keep hearing from people who've seen the film, who've been sharing it. This was their family's experience, and they've never seen it told, because it's just the camp, the concentration camp experience is the dominant narrative of the Japanese American experience during World War II. And so it's such a remarkable thing that my mother found, sought out and put together, the series of interviews that I think is really valuable and very meaningful. It's poignant and it's inspiring. So that's what kind of, really made us want to make this film.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. So that the story more like the memories of your family and your friends, and then the Japanese Americans, and then that's a message from me, like the message from their own personal stories, right? Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And also the fact that any of the people who experienced World War II at this point, it's it's over 80 years ago, and so the ability to capture those stories from firsthand experience, people remembering, their own families, journey that they sort of had to flee from the West Coast, and they had everything that they, could take with them packed in a car, or some people took the train, and were afraid, they'd heard rumors that they were going to be marched off the train and shot in the middle of the country. I mean, they really didn't know what they were going to experience. So to hear these really immediate firsthand stories that my mother captured, it's so valuable, because it's, we're losing that generation of people that remembers the wartime experience. And so really hearing their voices, hearing them speak from this, tremendous kind of emotional reality for them is one of the things that's very striking and valuable to me.
Right. Yeah. So thank you very much for your sharing. And I want to ask you another question. It's what is the message of your film, or what is the message from you guys? That's what I want to hear. So maybe it's going to be the Evelyn and Patrick going to talk about it.
Yes, I think we wanted to tell this story because it's never been told, and I think in some ways it's been painful for these the survivors that their story was never, and they, many of them did suffer greatly during this period. They were like refugees, I guess comparable to people who flee from war zones and so forth, and yet their experience was never, in a sense, part of the Japanese American story, which either focuses on the internment or on the experience of Japanese Americans in the military during that period. And that's become the dominant story. So I think it's important to tell this alternative story. And also, I think the ones who, quote, left on their own, in a sense, were very resourceful, but they also were much more fearful about what would happen to them if they went to the camps. In other words, at the time that they knew that they were going to be in the camps if they did not leave on their own very quickly, that they were feared they might be exterminated, for example, because at that time it was really unknown, what would happen to them. And then, of course, and we know subsequently what happened in Europe with Jews. And so I think it's important to look at that context in terms of making the decision to leave as opposed to wait to be rounded up, essentially.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you. How about you, Patrick?
Yeah, I think my mother touched on some very important points in there. One of our interviewees compared the experience to grapes of wrath, except heading east instead of west. And the notion of being a refugee within one's own country, I think, continues to have a lot of resonance today. There are refugees of all kinds, political refugees, migrating to different points in the world, coming into the United States. And also, in the age of COVID, we've seen a real surge in violence against Asian Americans of all kinds. These are not acts that tend to discriminate between or make a distinguishing between different types of Asians. And you can see that the hostility in the experience. One of our interviewees had to go to a high school, like a public high school, like he was any other student, and joined the football team, and of course experienced all kinds of mistreatment in that process. But with so much anti-Asian hate and violence happening now, I think these stories are as relevant and poignant as ever.
Gotcha. All right. So thank you very much, you guys. So the Before Take Us Away, this film is a documentary film, and people can watch online at JFFLA.org. You can go and see the posters and the details, what the story is like, and also that you can buy a ticket. So please go to the Japan Film Festival homepage, JFFLA.org, and please go watch it, and hope you guys gonna watch the film and see what's going on during those around the World War II, those kind of the stories of the Japanese American people, and they did a very good job. That's why we selected the film, and I hope people gonna enjoy watching it. And we're supposed to have one more film, but he's not showing up. So maybe we're gonna, finish our story, this YouTube. And before we leave, may I take like a screenshot with everybody? Is it okay with you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. So. Okay, I wanna be prepared. Okay, so you guys ready? Like that smile is what I want. You ready? So 3, 2, 1, smile. All right, thank you very much.